Hello, today I'm going to discuss stevia side effects and warnings. Now, this is a big question that many people have regarding stevia. Is stevia safe? And that's why I want to address this one first on this Madrone Mountain broadcast. Now, um, here's an outline of what we're going to be going over. What is stevia? We're going to go over the stevia benefits, type of stevia products, fertility and hormone concerns, blood sugar and blood pressure concerns, other drug-drug interactions. The question, is it a carcinogen, food allergies, refined stevia side problems, Truvia problems, and the best choice natural stevia. So this might be a little bit of a long video for those who just want a quick answer. I would say natural stevia, to the extent we know what caveat, it's best to go with a natural choice, and most of these problems really are not huge issues for most people. And if you want a good place to buy good natural stevia, click on the link below for sun-dried natural stevia leaves from Paraguay. But for those who want more information on this particular topic, just stay with us. Now, stevia itself is a plant endemic to South America. It's been consumed by the Guarani Indians for hundreds of years. It's been, they love their mate. A lot of times they'll use it to sweeten the mate. It's often referred to as sweet leaf because it has a very naturally sweet taste. Now, there's some benefits to stevia relative to sugar, which is one of the reasons it's received a lot more press recently, including I saw a press release the other day with Coca-Cola. They're about to come out with their own stevia product. Here are the big benefits. One, it doesn't raise blood sugar, and there's some studies that suggest it might actually lower fasting blood glucose levels over use, but that's not confirmed, but there's some indications it might. Big advantages. There's no calories. You can, unlike sugar, you can eat stevia to your heart's content, and you're not going to put on extra weight. It's also natural, unlike many of the chemicals like aspartame that are sort of cooked up in a lab. This is natural, God-made product, and as a result, it has a long history of use as a sweetener in its natural form in South America. Now, there's different type of stevia products. Not all stevia is created equally. The first is, which is the type I would recommend, is raw leaf stevia. Basically, this is the natural sun-dried product that you get from the natural, as it's been consumed for hundreds and hundreds of years, both in South America and more recently Japan. It has a complete composition of 10 different glycosides. The glycosides is what gives it sweet taste. The stevia extracts, and this is sort of what man has sort of done to, or should I say the pharmaceutical industry, to just extract what it saw as the most active glycosides, mainly for mass production. And those are generally rebaudiana A is the most common, and stevioside is the other one that's often used. Rebaudiana A is probably the sweetest one. It has less of a bitter taste than stevioside, so you might see that more than the other one. But these extracts together are 200 times sweeter than sugar, much more potent. But you're also leaving out eight additional glycosides and some of the additional components of the natural stevia leaf product. Then finally, you have altered stevia. These are products that might contain stevia plus. Usually, it has a stevia extract, usually one of the above, and a bunch of other things. Truvia is the most well-known, and in fact, stevia is not really the main sweet component. It has a sugar alcohol called xylitol we'll discuss, and also has a lot of other processed materials in it. These altered stevia are concoctions like Truvia, generally 400 times sweeter than sugar, and like I said before, is that it's not just stevia. So when you think about the safety of stevia, these are things you really have to consider. Is it really stevia, or is it stevia plus? And the plus can become a problem. Now, one of the biggest things is there's a concern regarding fertility and hormone concerns, and This sort of originates anecdotally in South America. It was taken as a contraception, as a contraceptive. It's sort of that's sort of like a old wives' tale, folk medicine type of thing. However, I'm going to get to what studies have to say about it later. One of the other things that you find with it, it's structurally similar to several different hormones, like gibberellin, taurine. It's not the only. It's not. This isn't necessarily. This isn't necessarily out of the ordinary. Ginkgo biloba is also has hormonal similarities to these. It's just not talked about as much because of various organizations, particularly probably the chemical sweetener industry harping on the whole contraceptive thing, and a lot of those concerns perspective. Go back to a 32-year-old study that was done, and this study has really never been reproduced. One of the problems with it is number one, they didn't use they used a lot of parts of the stevia plant that just aren't used traditionally. Number one, so it doesn't really replicate what you normally have with stevia consumption. The other thing is the method of administration is quite traumatic. This was an animal model, and I believe it was rats, if I remember right, and it was the equivalent of stuffing down for a human 2.5 quarts in less than half an hour. Which you wonder if it's the eye levels of the stevia, or it's the trauma created by trying to just stuff such a large amount of liquid down, then that's just not good for you. Now, what I would highlight, and there's also another 1988 study that was done in Brazil that had some similar issues. There was a more recent study in 1991 done at several different doses, the highest being 2,500 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. And to give you a sense, that's 2.5. The normal natural dose people who consume this normally take is 2.5 milligrams per kilogram. So again, this is another animal model. Most of the stevia studies you'll find are done in animals. Because I'll discuss why you do these in animal studies later. It's really hard to get good data as far as side effects and stuff like that on humans without long studies. But this was 1,000 times the natural dose, and they studied the generations after that, and there appeared to be, in any of the doses, 2,500 being the highest dose, they found no effect on fertility. So, some of the most recent data would seem to suggest a lot of the concerns regarding stevia are probably not that concerning. So on to the next series of concerns. The other thing you hear about regarding stevia is concerns about blood sugar and blood pressure concerns. Now, what's ironic is a lot of these are also cited as benefits because there have been studies. Unlike a lot of other sugar substitutes, there have been studies, particularly sugar, that, and this probably has to do with the fact that stevia really it provides no caloric intake and is not working the same way as sugar. That long-term stevia use will lower blood sugar and blood pressure. None of these studies are really conclusive. Most of this is animal data, and it's very preliminary. But the concerns come around for those taking diabetes and blood pressure medications. If you have diabetes and you're taking diabetes medication and you have poorly managed blood sugar, the question, you add stevia onto your base medications, you could lower blood sugar even more. Maybe you become hypoglycemic. Same with blood pressure medicine. Stevia is a diuretic. Thus a natural diuretic, thus the lower blood pressure effect. So if you take that on top of other blood pressure medicines, you might have much greater blood pressure loss. It's interesting with these things. They always say, well, you shouldn't take stevia because it interacts with blood pressure medicine. They never say that maybe you shouldn't take your blood pressure medicines with stevia and just take the natural stevia. But again, there's not a lot of, there's some basis to that, and I personally don't like synthetic pharmaceuticals because you never know what their long-term side effects really are. Because they're just unnatural. It's sort of my bias, but they're never going to be probably as potent as those pharmaceuticals. So, and there really haven't been good long-term studies done on stevia. But normally, ordinarily in a vacuum, these concerns would normally be seen as a positive towards consuming the product. Particularly a lot of these effects really might not happen except at higher doses. People are using this as a sweetener and not going to be taking a ton. Now, another one I have seen that's on sort of like some blogs and stuff like that I really haven't seen a lot of facts backing up is this idea that stevia does not support glycogen synthesis. And the general idea behind this is, your body needs, well, there's a couple different ways people sort of spin this, but your body needs glucose, and you're not getting a natural store of glucose. You're only getting the stimulation of glucose. So you're not getting that, but you need glycogen stores in your body and your liver. The problem with this idea is that most people are not having a problem getting a lot of glucose. Sugar is not the only form of glucose you take in, especially if you eat a lot of high carbohydrate diets. Carbohydrates are nearly always broken down into some sort of glucose. And even you get small amounts and a lot of stuff you wouldn't consider carbs. Any food generally has a mix of carbs, fats, and proteins. And one of the other concerns, the idea that you're not going to store glycogen if you're eating stevia is really absurd. It's sort of like saying you're not going to store glycogen if you don't eat sugar. One of the other spins on this is the idea you're getting the stimulation in the mouth of sweetness, so it gives your blood the signal that it should basically prepare for glucose. So it basically goes in and flushes existing glucose out of the blood, and then it doesn't receive it. So you have too low glucose level, and then you have to have various corticosteroids such as adrenaline and cortisol to be released to sort of replenish the glucose. Like I said, I haven't seen any information cited as to any evidence that stevia itself stimulates this effect. And like I said, if you are eating stevia with other stuff, chances are you are getting other forms of glucose that would need to be processed. It might not be as high as if it was with sugar, but like I said, this is a pretty speculative fact. And like I said, I would like to see some clinical data before that becomes a concern. And a concern related to that is sort of similar things relative to a metabolism hormone called T3. And again, a lot of this gets back to glycogen. The theory behind this gets back to, in the presence of the glycogen helps convert T4 to T3. And there's a study going around through 2008 showing the lower levels of T3 hormone when very large doses of stevia are given. But again, if you think about, if you gave these are in animals, and you're just giving tons of this stuff, more than anyone would ever eat. And if you think about some of these potential hypotheses, if you're getting a lot of stevia and really with nothing else, maybe there would be some sort of glycogen concerns because you're really your stevia to glycogen ratio, because you're not getting anything else relative to it when you're eating. That would be a problem. But that doesn't happen in real life. You eat a little bit of stevia with other foods that has presumably other sources of glucose in it. And like I said, this is not necessarily physiological. You have to understand why these studies are done with large doses in rats. One of the reasons you do animal studies is because you can't really induce a lot of side effects. I mean, if you do human studies, it'll take you years to identify side effects in randomized controlled studies. So to try to flush out various side effects, what they'll often do is just dump in animals just huge amounts to see what side effects you might have in the future. And this typically is most useful for stuff like cancer, where to sort of basically substitute amount for time. Okay, because cancer takes a long time to develop, so you put a lot of amount on it. So in cancer, this is very justified, and in all of these it's justified. But when you're talking about systems such as glucose processing systems, where you start to get way outside the physiological boundaries relative to what you're taking as food, this really has less value. And really, these type of, if there is a problem, you should generally be able to find these out in sort of more human studies. But like I said, I would not worry too much about that, especially given this is something that's been taken 100 years down in South America with no problems. Let's see, the next thing. Again, drug-drug interactions, other sort of related to this. Again, since stevia is a natural diuretic, it does interfere with lithium metabolism. If you take lithium, that's something you should be concerned about. and diabetes medications. Maybe if you compound stevia on top of diabetes medications, you get lower blood sugar. That could be a problem. And again, I think I referred to this in the prior slide. It could potentially lower your blood pressure, since stevia is a natural diuretic. So you may or may not want to use it in combination with the blood pressure medicine, or you may want to tweak down your blood pressure medication. Consult with your doctor on sort of these type of issues. Like I said, it'd be my preference to not even take the blood pressure medicine, to go with stevia and look for natural alternatives to lower blood pressure, which do exist. But again, be careful however you do that. Again, the other thing back on that slide, a lot of these benefits really haven't been quantified, as like it's relatively speculative. So it's not like we know that there's a huge drop in blood pressure from using stevia. I mean, I imagine a lot of people would like even a marginal thing for a health benefit, but we just don't know. Is stevia a carcinogen? That's another question that sort of comes up. Now, there have been some, again, these studies are legitimate in that you do want to. This is one of the biggest potential problems with any compound you take. This is where you want to do this. And there was a study published in Food and Toxicology 1997 where they had, I think these were rats as well. I don't remember. But stevia was basically given as up to 5% of the diets, which is a large amount. No one's going to take stevia as 5% of the diet. And actually, not only did they, when they did histology, which is basically histology is where you look at the tissues of these animals to see if there's any tumor growth or cancer growth. They actually found not only did they were the tumors, but the females actually tended to have less breast tumors than those who didn't take stevia, and males actually had less evidence of kidney damage. So if anything, there might be an unconfirmed a benefit relative to cancer. Nutrition, and there's another nutrition and cancer study that actually suggested a breast cancer reduction as well. And there's another study I don't have on here that sort of indicated when it was given with some other natural cancer inhibitors of colon cancer that dramatically increased the antioxidant activity of those particular compounds. Whether that translates in lower cancer activity, you don't know. But most of the evidence would actually seem to indicate maybe there doesn't seem to be a carcinogenic effect from what we know, and maybe there might be a benefit. Again, that's very speculative at this point. And this is one of the biggest concerns people have with a new compound. And again, when you have a natural compounds, you tend to have less of a carcinogen risk, generally speaking, because when man makes artificial chemicals, they have no idea what it does in real world when in a real body. It wasn't sort of naturally made, God made. I mean, anything can be a carcinogen, but if man's coming up out of it, they tend to optimize a compound for a receptor, and that tends to have secondary effects that you can't predict. Food allergies. This is a concern for some people. Again, this is very rare, but as with really most foods, any food, people can be allergic to even wheat. But stevia can cause anaphylactic reactions in certain people. Again, this is very rare. It's generally in people who have allergic reactions to members of similar plant families like chrysanthemums, marigold, ragweed, and daisy. So if you have allergy issues, this might be something that you might want to get a test on, or look at whether your your profile would sort of match with the type of people who generally have issues with this. Now let's get to some of the differences between the natural leaf and the extracts. Now, stevia site itself, in studies where they've used stevia site extract, I found that you can, again, this is doesn't have a huge amount, but you can get upset stomach and mild nausea after consuming it. It's usually very mild, and this compound can also decrease the appetite, which some people might see as an advantage, actually. But then again, this is one of the reasons you probably shouldn't be using an extract alone, because you're not getting the full sequence of glycosides that tend to, that's going to give you a more natural profile. You're going to get, anytime you get more of one over the other, you have the chance of you're getting a more concentrated potential to get a side effect such as this. Then there's the third class, which is stevia plus a lot of other stuff. Truvia is the best known. The most active sweetener in that is actually not a stevia itself. I believe it uses just one of the glycosides of stevia, rebaudiana. But xylitol, which is a sort of a patented sugar alcohol, I believe, and that Coke uses. I think it's Coke. It's like a 42-stage process. I think I read is in the patent, and it's not. This is anything but natural. Yes, it's based on some sort of natural sugar sugar alcohols, but this itself is not produced naturally at all. You know, one of the things it uses, it's basically done through a hydrogenation, sugar hydrogenation reaction. If you're familiar with hydrogenation of fats, it's sort of the same type of chemical process, except, and you have to use rainy nickel to catalyze it, which gives it a sort of an additional heavy metal in your diet. That may or may not be bad, but something to think about. More importantly to me is that most sugar alcohol is generally known from this coming from birch trees, but typically the xylitol is usually derived from the cheaper source of sugar alcohol, which is corn. And as you know, in North America, most corn is genetically modified. And what's wrong with genetically modified corn? I would suggest you go to YouTube and look at Seeds of Deception. You know, the problem with GMO or corn is you're making plants. GM or corn, so those that don't know, it's corn where you actually put a pesticide in the corn. You modify it. It's not just that it's a better corn for genetic selection. They actually put a gene of the Bt toxin in the corn, so it produces pesticide in the corn. So if pests eat the corn, they die. The problem is, if you have normal pest sprayed crops, which isn't necessarily great either, you can wash it off. But you eat the corn, you're guaranteed to eat the pesticide every time you eat it. And there's a lot of evidence that, anecdotal evidence that what you would expect from Bt toxin toxicity, which is basically leaky gut syndrome and stuff like that, have really gone up a lot the last 15 years since GMO corn has become into existence. Bt toxin basically solubilizes cell walls, breaks them up. And Monsanto basically lied to the FDA and said this doesn't cause effects in humans, and now there have been studies that come out and basically says yes, it does cause effects in humans. And if you look at a study in Canada, it's really in pregnant mothers, they found it in between 80 to 90% concentrations in fetuses and mothers respectively. I can't remember which. I think it was 80% mothers, 90% fetuses, but I might have that result. But in very highly detectable levels. So it's very concerning. You have this toxic pesticide, and these are the types of things that can cause chronics over time. They're not going to kill you immediately. They're not going to cause problems immediately, but as they do more and more damage, you're going to see the impacts over time, and most likely it will be in irritable bowel disease, some sort of gut disorder, and who knows what, because really the FDA never really studied this in real humans. Another potential issue with xylitol is it's not really digested in the stomach like sugar and some other artificial sweeteners, and so it sort of persists and allows you to in the gut itself, and actually it can be another fermentation product for bacteria, and you can potentially build up some undesirable bacteria. At least that's a theoretical thing. Like some of the things even with stevia, we don't really know if this is an issue or not, but this is something to consider if you really are worried about the safety of stevia. These are issues you don't have to necessarily deal with if you basically consume pure stevia. When you're adding these extra ingredients in, you have additional things you have to worry about. There's also been shown some potential acid reflux problems, increased incidence of epileptic seizures and stuff like that. In one study, interestingly enough, 100-gram rats were actually killed with only 1.65 grams of xylitol, which is really not, relative to the size of the rat, that's a lot, but this isn't just cancer or whatever, they literally killed with it. So that is somewhat concerning there. All right. And then, again, there's other compounds in it as well. Glycerin, which coats the teeth and interferes with teeth mineralization. It may or may not be a big deal for you. And then dextrose, I believe there's another additive as well. I forget, it starts with an E, I forget off the top of my head. It's usually based on corn. Again, if you get more Bt toxin, or it's GMO corn. Generally, I try to stay away from all corn products at all myself these days. So what are the best choice? If you really want to go with stevia, I'm not saying these other things aren't safe. There might be issues with them on the margin, but this is the natural leaf products. It's got a more natural blend of glycosides. So to the extent there's any problem with one, that's going to mitigate any of the side effects of them, because you've got a diversity of sugars there. In the natural form, it's been used for hundreds of years. In fact, I have a friend who came down to living in Paraguay, who 2 years ago, really he didn't like stevia so much in the United States. He said he got a headache after using it. This bad aftertaste and stuff like that. When he started taking in the natural thing down there, when he tried it, from some of the natural stuff, he found the aftertaste really wasn't there as much, and he really didn't get the sort of headaches. And the headaches might have come through some of these other processed ingredients that are used up for a lot of the stevia extracts that are sold commercially. One other thing relative to the natural leaf products it does come up. There are people who say, well, the FDA approved in 2008 Truvia and a lot of other products based on stevia extracts, based on studies, and the FDA says, well, we don't know if the leaf is good. We've approved the extracts, but we don't know if the leaf. We haven't approved the leaf, the natural leaf, so we don't know if that's safe or not. Yeah, here's the issue. They have not done studies on the leaf. That is true, because no pharmaceutical company is going to do studies on something that they can't monopolize. These large double-blind randomized controlled studies, they cost a lot of money, and really you're not going to see that on any food product or any natural product. In fact, you don't even have that sort of data on corn or watermelon or anything else. So the fact they're calling people can call attention to that is a little rather ridiculous. It's basically a food just like anything else. It's been used for hundreds of years. There's no reason to believe it's any less safe than anything else you might consume naturally. So, and like I said, I've gone through some of the data here. If anything, you would expect, since it's not artificially processed into the most active components, and that's generally where the pharmaceutical industry has the most problems, it arguably should be safer. You don't ever know for sure with anything until you run double-blind, placebo-controlled studies, which are virtually never done on food products. All right, hopefully this is very helpful. If you are interested in where to get natural leaf products that are completely natural, from the source, South America, where it was originally grown, not at some factory in China, which a lot of the stevia sold does come from China now, not even South America. Go to the link below, and you can find out about Paraguay stevia, which is real sun-dried stevia made in Paraguay, no artificial preservatives or anything added to it. You literally get the leaves yourself. You just grind them down in a coffee grinder, and you can use it with or you can put it in a liquid as well. There's some videos up around there on how to do that as well. I'll put some more up here. So click on the link below to get your own natural leaf stevia product.